Stay tuned for Butler on Business, coming up next on the Liberty Express.
Welcome back to Butler on Business. My name is Jason Riddle in the studio with Alan Butler. We're joined now on the phone by the author of the new book, Fuse, Making Sense of the New Co-Generational Workplace, Jim Finklestein. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. How are you?
Jim, is it Finklestein?
Finklestein.
Sting? Okay, I got you. All right. Making sense of the new co-generational workplace. We talking about the old folks and the new folks?
We are. We're talking about from 18 to 80. And what we're finding is a very unique phenomenon in the workplace. We've got seniors who want to get back in. They've either run out of money or they've played too many rounds of golf, and they want the intellectual stimulation of coming back to work. We've got the boomers who are trying to get out, but they can't because of the most recent and ongoing recession. We've got Gen Xers who are still trying to climb the ladder and finding themselves stuck in place and underemployed. And then we've got the millennials, the youngsters, trying to get in and finding that there just aren't enough jobs. So we have this generational mashup. We have this war of the generations from 18 to 80 in the workplace. We call that the co-generational workplace.
Now, you mentioned the ongoing recession. I take it you are among the few who are actually informed.
Well, thank you. I don't believe we're out of the woods yet. I'm an optimist by nature. I see some signs of recovery, but we're not done yet.
Now, I had a wide range of ages working for me back in my manufacturing days. I made a habit of not knowing how old the people were. However, when you got an 80-year-old working for you, you kind of, I knew my birthday. I knew his birthday. I knew my cousins and my partners, but
right.
The other 200 or 300, I had no idea. But the 80-year-old, I knew how old he was. So what's it like? I mean, we never really had much trouble. I do remember one time, the 80-year-old fellow, whenever I retired one of my chairs in my office, executive chair, I would give it to him. He worked in my machine shop. And the fella people don't realize most of our tool and die makers, we don't have anymore. It took as long to apprentice a tool and die maker as it does a surgeon.
Yes.
But they didn't make near the money, and, they're all overseas now. So we've lost an entire skill set here in this country. So if you've got an accomplished tool and die maker, a precision tool maker, he's worth his weight in gold. So
absolutely.
All right, so I kept this fella gainfully employed, but at 80 years old, he'd fall asleep. So I gave him a chair that he could sleep in.
Well, that might have been back in the day. We're actually discovering, and anecdotally, we know that Southwest Airlines has 70-year-old flight attendants. We certainly know that Walmart has greeters at the front door that are as old as 80. And we talk about it from 18 to 80 to make the point that it is the mashup of generations. And it is a very unusual situation because most people were retired out by 65, and they stayed retired out. The bookends of what we're really looking at, though, guys, is the millennials. That's the youngsters, and the boomers, and that's the folks that are probably between 55 and 65 that are trying to get out. And those are the big bulk of the workplace right now. And those are the ones that are finding that there's some generational differences and disharmony, and we're trying to find the synergies and the symmetries and the collaboration and cooperation as people are, in fact, competing for jobs. We've got situations where moms and dads are competing with their kids for the same job. And so it's a very, very unusual dynamic in the workplace, and that's why we wrote the book, was to try and bring awareness to it, and not only just to generational differences, in which there have been thousands of books written, but generational similarities. I often refer to myself as a millennial and boomer clothing. That's because I think that the mindset that I have, my learning modalities are very similar to the way some of the millennials are learning today. And we could talk a little bit about that if you want, but that's what we focused on, is really the boomers and the millennials in the workplace and how to get them to just get along.
Well, back to my 80-year-old, he ran a grinder, a milling machine, and a lathe, and, you could sit there and let this thing run itself, and then that's when he'd fall asleep. And I had one fella, younger fella, a millennial as you're referring to them, who said, I want that guy's job. So I said, well, I took him back into the machine shop area. I handed him a block of D2 steel. And I said, you see this? And he goes, yeah. I said, make me a cam, have it back to me tomorrow, and I'll let you have a chair too. And couldn't do it. So that was my point. These older fellas bring a skill set that a lot of the young people, that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, and you raise a decent point in terms of what's being taught in the vocational schools, in the tracks where kids don't go to college, which is not an unworthy thing to do. I mean, not everybody goes to college or needs to go to college, but where are the trades being taught? How in demand are the trades today, or have they all been exported overseas? So what we tend to do is fill the supply and demand for jobs as necessary with folks that will build those skill sets. We know, for example, there's a tremendous demand for nursing talent, for example, and the nursing schools are full with students trying to get out and get their nursing degrees because there are jobs that are being created in the healthcare profession. So in certain professions, we know that there is demand. There's demand for engineers. There's demand for computer science skills. Some of the hard skills that we had out of the manufacturing era just aren't in demand because it's been given up to automation or it's been given up to other countries. So we go where the supply and the demand is.
Now, you reference a finding by the Labor Department that 88 million jobless Americans aged 16 and older are not actively trying to look for work.
There are a lot of people who've given up. That's absolutely correct. I think that we find that there are people who, put out their resumes into the world. They don't get any reaction, and they're sitting on the sidelines waiting for people to either come to them or waiting for things to change. So there are a lot of people who are not actively searching, and that's part of the problem. They've been hit with too many slam doors in their face, and so they're discouraged. And that's part and parcel of the problem. And there's also another group of people, the underemployed, who have kind of stuck to it and gotten in, but they've gotten jobs that are well beneath their skill sets. And they're taking those jobs, but they're very frustrated. And over time, they will be non-productive because they realize that perhaps they should have been somewhere else. So there's this malaise kind of spreading through the workforce, even though the numbers of unemployed may change over time. The question is, are they happy, productive, focused? And my commentary is not yet. This marketplace has not turned around.
Well, let's talk briefly about people who are working in jobs that they are, quote, unquote, overqualified for. Mm-hmm. I had a neighbor about 25 years ago that was a head of a hospital. He was a hospital administrator. Mm-hmm. And the hospital was acquired, and they put in their own guy, and he lost his job. And he came knocking on my door one morning and said he was looking for a job. I told him, I said, Wayne, I don't have anything for you. I mean, I got an $8 an hour job. Now, that's 25 years ago.
Right.
And his reply was, that's $8 an hour more than I'm making right now.
Yes.
So I put him to work, and he went on to have a six-figure income with me. Mm-hmm. Took a few years, but that was the attitude of that generation.
Absolutely correct. There's an attitudinal change that's gone on. Some people, believe it's beneath them to take jobs where they don't have the aptitude. Others are willing to flip burgers or do whatever it takes in order to gain an income. And those are the kinds of attitudes that get shaped by either the availability of jobs or the willingness of employers to hire people who've been sitting on the sidelines. There are many employers who basically will not even interview you if you've been unemployed. So you're your goose is cooked from the get-go. So we have this dynamic in the workplace, both from the employer side that's unwilling to look at these guys who are willing to take a cut and pay to get a job, and they say, well, you're overqualified, or people who are basically saying it's beneath me. It's a double-edged sword. And that's causing some of the malaise, again, as I've referred to, in this co-generational workplace.
Now, how do you respond to the people that won't work because they can't find a job that's going to pay them enough money? So they'd rather not make any.
So my response is you do whatever it takes. I mean, you cobble together 3 or 4 jobs in order to meet your obligations, whatever those might be. And I think that's just sort of a natural human thing that we should be doing rather than sitting on the sideline and assuming that somebody's going to take care of you.
Well, you know who I noticed does a lot of that are the immigrants. They'll work 2-3 jobs. I know quite a few that work several jobs.
I think it spans across generations. It spans across ethnic groups. It spans across political inclination. There are people who are willing to work, and there are people who are not. And I think that's the attitudinal change that needs to occur as we move through this economic malaise and into an era where perhaps there's a little bit more optimism and a little bit more upbeatness to the marketplace and things start to turn around again. But yes, there are plenty of people out there that are willing to work multiple jobs. You just have to match those people with the jobs that are available in order to stimulate the economy. And that matchup is not always being well done.
You would agree that we are paying many, many millions of people not to work right now?
I think there are people who are on unemployment. Yes, that's correct. And some people, deserve to be on unemployment and some don't. I don't want to go down the political path of this. I think there are more people that are unemployed that shouldn't be. But we are paying people right now not to work. That's correct.
Oh, I agree. There are people. I'm always been a proponent of some unemployment to handle a transitional state.
Jim, let me ask you this. What are some maybe advice that you could offer for the folks right now, particularly the younger folks that are looking at this down economy, that are discouraged, that don't see a whole lot of prospects? What do you say to those people right now?
Couple of things. Number one, stay connected. Most important thing is that the way you're going to find a job is through your social network. It really is through people that you know and the people that they know. And whether it's a LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the other sort of social media, social networking sites, very important to stay connected, because just throwing your resume at a wall isn't going to make it happen. It's going to be who you know and how they connect you to others. Don't also hesitate to ask people for help. Hey, I know you work such and such a place. Might they have a job available that has my skill sets, and could you introduce me? So don't, you can't be bashful in this marketplace. The third thing and final thing that I'd suggest is that you've got to get and continue to get relevant skills. And you can do that through vocational training. You can do it through online courses, and whether it's computer skills or other forms of skills that you deem to be necessary, don't hesitate to continue to be a student. You got to be a student and gain those skills. Final thing, actually, I'll give you a fourth, is volunteer if necessary. Take an internship if necessary in order to get yourself some resume credibility, and also it helps the networking process.
Well, it's certainly an active process. We need people to stay motivated, to get out there, and the first step is actually just getting started, doing something. Like you said, networking is extremely important, getting the experience, whether it be through an internship or maybe a job that's not at your target salary level, but get out there, be active, and get started down the road.
Absolutely correct.
We've been speaking with Jim Finklestein. He's the author of the new book, Fuse, Making Sense of the New Co-Generational Workplace. It's available for purchase on Amazon.com and also will be available in ebook format.